conversation.
Morning, Cathy and the team. I just heard Barbara Creasy on the radio explaining how pedestrian deaths are the big ones, leading to fatalities on our roads. On the N3 near Howick in the KZN Midlands, you can drive along, and I was driving down to Pietermaritzburg. On the left was a cop car under the bridge, and on the right was a woman walking along the centre median with her back to the traffic in the yellow line. And when she walked under the bridge, she looked at the cops. They did nothing. So if the law is not enforced, why would behaviour change? It's just unacceptable. The poor sods that hit these people running across the highway is just not on.
Morning, Cathy. Morning. Hey, Donald Trump is serious. That man sounded very serious, and he even says he's going to sign those things today. So I wonder why is our president not as firm as Donald Trump. We might not agree with Donald Trump on certain policies, but Donald Trump is firm on what he believes in, and he goes. But our president is wishy-washy. We don't know where he stands. That's why he was not even invited. If we are the biggest economy in Africa and we are not invited to America when they put the president, then there's an issue. There's a serious issue. Or is it because we are part of BRICS?
Hi, Cathy. Good morning, Mafuta. Cathy, we are again in another 4 years of turmoil with the president of Donald Trump. Cathy, when one listens to this gentleman speaking, his speeches are connivingly ignorant. Why is it that Donald Trump thinks trade in the world is about the U.S., or there's no benefit from trading with other countries that the U.S. gets from? I think it's time that African leaders, African countries rethink about their position in terms of world trade around the exportation of minerals. Again, this annual ritual of going to Davos, I personally don't see its benefit. We have to grow our economics within. Investment has to come from small enterprises, not those foreign investment which are always told about. Cathy.
Good morning, Cathy Takatai in Kofimvaba. Nice weather in the Eastern Cape, drizzling, foggy on the mountains. Cathy, the ANC is shooting itself again on the foot, or by trying to X some of their members from KwaZulu-Natal province and Gauteng. ANC, please don't be ignorant, man. We've told you that the reason why you didn't win elections of 2024, it is because of the whole ANC that is forgetting about the South African people, thinking about the foreign nationals. I'm not xenophobic, but I'm just talking the truth. ANC, please make sure that you listen to the people. People, they don't have roads, they don't have water, some they don't have electricity, unemployment is high. Thanks, Katie Tagatayo.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for those WhatsApp voice notes. ANC, please listen to the people. Does that also include what is going to happen next in terms of this reconfiguration of the ANC? I wonder. Vincent, you're in the Western Cape. Good morning. Good morning, Vincent.
Yes, Katie.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, Katie. I'd like to first talk about the Steel Fontaine, that tiger guy who escaped from police.
Yes, Vincent. Much of it, of course, I know yesterday in the afternoon, Ashraf dealt a great deal with that particular story. But what do you want to add?
Okay, I just wanted to illustrate it that tiger was said to not have been booked from any of the records by the police from the time they resurfaced from the shaft there until his time of escape, citing that these people otherwise could have those kingpins, as they said, that there are some powers behind that people that also helped him to escape from that one. Okay. Then I'd like to also talk about the summit there in Davos for the president and the whole delegation that he takes with him there.
All
that,
right.
Yes, that's why we get to a point that we won't care, like the previous caller was saying, because what the president talks there is always the message that we always talk to us. They always take, we will be doing this to our people, we will be doing this to our people, but when will they start talking that we are doing this to our people?
So it's too much commitment then, Vincent. It's too aspirational and not really realistic.
Exactly, and if you can trace, look at all the speeches from the United Nations, from the AU, even from the SONA here, and where he's speaking, that you can judge from before he even speaks, that you only will be seeing him swinging on the podium, swinging left and swinging to the right, but talking the same thing that we can even start to be reciting before he even get to talk there, because it's a thing that he has always been saying every time. And when they come back here, we won't see the difference or the effect of what they've been talking there.
Sure. All right, Vincent. In the Western Cape, thanks for calling in with that view. As you heard there, yet another expression, right, of this. There's a word I'm looking for. When it comes to me, I'll use it to describe part of the sentiment that is being shared by our listeners on the messaging. It's believability, and to what extent it then actually matters for South Africans. Buti, you're calling us from Soweto. Good morning.
Cathy, good morning. Cathy, I want to be short and quick in this one. I want to throw my 2 cents opinion around the issue of interpreting in the court. As the situation unfolds recently or currently in that sexual harassment hearing in Rosebank. The interpreters are most junior people in the processes, whether in court, at the CNA or anywhere. They are the most junior, because if you will find, if you look there, most of them will have metric, and there are requirements in different places to know English or know Zulu. Nguni, in terms of Gauteng, you must know English, Nguni, and Sotho. That is 3 languages. It's not as easy as it is said. However, my only challenge then is when you are expected to interpret without any qualms in a language that is you are translating from English to vice versa. Understandably, you have never done Sotho at school. You got Sotho in the streets in Soweto because there are so many people speaking different languages. You are not an expert in that language. You are not a language practitioner. You haven't gone to university to study each language so that you can translate 100%. So, what I'm trying to outline here, Cathy, is that I always give them credit. So was the first constitutional judge, Pierre Langa, in his Swan Song article on Sowetan between 2007 or 2007 and 2009, when he was leaving or retiring as a judge of the Constitutional Court. He outlined that the interpreters are doing a sterling job, as albeit that they are the most senior, but they are the most important people in that process, because they are the ones who make each and every person understand each other. So it is for me, it is incorrect for us to judge them whether they are translating or they are interpreting correctly or not correctly.
Okay.
These are the people who have to get the word quickly over his head. He doesn't have the dictionary anything yet to check if this word in English can be this word in Xhosa, as I'm a Xhosa. It just has to come quickly out of my mind to think which word to use.
Okay, all right, Buti. I think you've made the point, Buti, out in Soweto. Look, I don't think it's so much a criticism, right? But there is, of course, an expectation that however a message is being interpreted, it will be the most fair reflection or interpretation of what was said or what was meant. And so, yes, sometimes they do come under scrutiny. They are criticized because, sometimes it's not a perfect art, right? As I remember one of my teachers in primary school, my Sepedi teacher used to say that there's no master of pronunciation, right? And so even things like that sometimes have an implication on how things are interpreted. But I don't think that we should shy away from scrutinizing the quality of work done simply because of the implications that is going to have on the trials that are taking place in court, the court processes. It has a very real impact on people's lives. Lisiba, you're in Limpopo. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Kitty, and good morning to our listeners, and thanks for taking my call. Yes, here in Khobokwane. Yes.
So Lisiba, are you supporting the reconfiguration?
Yeah, my issue today was about unemployment doctors, but before that, I wanted to comment on that one.
I knew that there was no way that you were going to speak and not talk about your organization, Lisiba.
Yes, my organization, and I will die in this organization. You see, I like to express my concern about reconfiguration of KwaZulu-Natal, but in Gauteng, I know reconfiguration is going to work and it will take that province forward. But in KwaZulu-Natal, because the PEC there, it does not account to the ANC as a structure. It accounts to individual who's a leader of Umkhonto Wesizwe party. Therefore, the resources, all the efforts, the program to rejuvenate our movement in KwaZulu-Natal will not going to help the ANC there, but they will be channeled to Umkhonto Wesizwe. Therefore, I said the complete removal of that leadership and establish a new leadership that will take that province to the provincial conference was going to be a very good move. But with Gauteng, I think it's a good move.
Lisiba, what do you expect reconfiguration to be? What do you think it's going to entail?
No, a new way of doing things in that province in line with the challenges that are.
What does that mean?
The renewal of the organization in totality in those provinces, because we need to re-establish ourselves with the branches of the movement. We need to re-establish ourselves with the voters in those two provinces, because we are completely lost touch with our people on the ground. We need to revamp the whole way of doing things in these two provinces, because really we are not going to survive the next elections. We will leave these things as they are.
Okay.
But in other provinces, I think the normal enhancement of what they've been doing is going to help. But these two provinces are going to be a very big problem, in particular KwaZulu-Natal. So
Look,
my issue today, yes.
Lisiba, as long as you understand what that all means, I guess that's fine.
I know what I'm taking off, I know. so Kate, you see, the issue of unemployment, specifically the doctors, I want to send a clear message to these doctors and other people that may be organizing themselves in protest. You see, what we've been doing in our universities lately of making sure that we increase the number of students that are enrolled in bachelors, we increase the number of students that are going to study these doctor issues. It is annually increasing, and it started to give the result. The way the education system, the higher education system has been revamped, is giving the result. And as it gives the result, we will have more doctors than we had before. So many doctors will be able to absorb the system. Others will not, because now we are having many doctors. What we should look into is into other possibilities, whether these doctors they can go and open their private practice, and we can also look how we remunerate these doctors, because their package is too high. So with a package of one doctor, if you can check, if you can pay 2 or 3 doctors and other professionals, because it's not only the doctors that are facing the issue of income. We've got other organized people. We've got other professionals, even the domestic workers, the general workers, the petrol attendants, everywhere they are facing unemployment. But to organize yourself, to confront government is going to be a very big problem. But I appreciate the positivity that is coming out of the media, because this time around, you are not pushing for the removal of anyone from the office. We are not pushing for the exchange of any political party, because it's a government of national unity. We are moving towards the solutions of our problem.
Okay, Lisiba, we're going to leave it there. Lisiba out in Limpopo. Look, I guess if we began with just improving our primary healthcare system, then perhaps it would create different opportunities, right, of the next tier of health administration. And maybe also if we're building more hospitals, we wouldn't have to think about where are these doctors going to go. If we're increasing the capacity of health provision at that level, right, not only from a capacity and human personnel, human resource point of view, but also from an infrastructure point of view, it could well help solve some of the challenges that we deal with today. Let me take a quick break. We continue with the open line after this.
Just last month, it was December, the season to be merry, or December, for those who know that it's not just a month, but a lifestyle. Now it's January and life is threatening watching financially. There's back to school and your own goals, and January is on everyone's lips.
Mara, you can get the relief you need right now and start the year strong with the personal loan from Nedbank with access up to 400,000 Rand. Search Nedbank Personal Loans and get a loan that offers you more. Nedbank. See money differently. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
#SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. It is still your open line. It's your National Roundtable on 086 000 2032. That's where I'm taking your calls. On the WhatsApp voice note line is 0614 104 107. Vuyiswa, you're in Parktown North. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy. How are you?
Good.
Yes, thanks. First of all, before I say what I want to say, I just want to congratulate President Ibrahim Traore for rejecting the invitation to Trump's inauguration, because the things that I saw in that inauguration, that he was completely white, sprinkly for those people, I think few, and the fact that he addressed that he's going to go after all those countries that, or America, they owe us a lot as the African continent. They plunder here, they loot, they steal, they impose all these things that we don't need. And
do you think that Trump has an appreciation for that, Vuyiswa?
He doesn't, because he's a complicated character. So it's not you're not supposed to trust him. And on the Davis issue, it's just a boys' club. They are being bullied, African leaders there. In 2013, I'll be quick. Wellington Peggy wrote an article. I just relocated back home. He talks about China overflying Africa, Western powers overflying Africa to China to promote China as an economic hub, while all what they have in Europe, it's out of Africa. They benefited from Africa. They are stealing in Africa. The following week, it was Sunday Independent. Paulo Jordan is offended, and he responds to Mwelezi. That day, it's Utamkulwa Matiba, Olishasha Mandela. The gathering in Davos was one of the where he was seen after Robben Island, after he was released. He was told, that's Paulo Jordan revealing that secret, that external powers, external powerful powers told Mandela when he was in Davos that he can touch anything politically and otherwise, but not property. So you can learn from that. I think I'll stop there. You understand what I mean?
Oh, obviously, property, of course, underpinning, right?
That's right.
It's the bedrock of the modern economy, isn't it?
Quite right.
So one hearing that is absolutely something that
you
makes sense.
You can actually go, because I've got it in my archives, but you can go and Google it that way. I've forgotten the title, but he was saying why China is overflying, why Western powers are overflying Africa. That made them to be what they call themselves first world, yet they are not first world.
I guess, so one of the juxtapositions there is also just how much attention used to be paid to the forums and gatherings, and including the presence of a country like South Africa. Today, we're probably taking some of the biggest delegations that we ever have, and I'm sure it's been sustained.
In the name of G20, that is less than 11 months, and it's not going to help any poor person. I think I agree with the other caller. This is not for us. I think it was Michael or whatever. We are not part of plan, Yes, we're not part of this plan, and we must forget raising our hopes and euphoria about yes, we are in this. What's really there are just boys being told what to do and not what to do.
Sure.
They're going to just take orders. That whole delegation is a waste of money. They were supposed to be here, these comrades, and listen to the problems of the citizen of this country.
All right.
Just a white man's power hub. Switzerland.
Let's leave it there. Voiswa out in Parktown North. Lerotodio in Kempton Park. You also want to talk about Davos. Hello, Lerotodi.
Oh, Cathy, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Yeah. What I want to talk about President Ramaphosa in Davos. My comment is Ramaphosa is not representing South Africans. He is there to represent ANC and foreigners. Because Ramaphosa is a president of foreigners. Ramaphosa, when South African crying out something about foreigners, he can't help us. Ramaphosa is the president who took 500 million of spaza shop to give the Ethiopian. Because 90% of the spaza shop owned by the foreigners. So,
but Lirotodi, number one, the distribution of those funds hasn't even begun. Government, of course, is still in the process of registering spaza shops. So we don't know that 80% of those registered spaza shops that could be eligible for this money would, in fact, be owned, as you are, alleging, by Ethiopians. I think maybe just make the point that you want to make, Lirotodi.
Yes, Kat. Here is the government. They are refusing about the answer. That's the question to be answered by the government, saying, are we saying this money, is it strictly for the South Africans or both foreigners and South Africans? They refuse to answer on that one. So now, that is my concern, because ever since Ramaphosa is a president, I'm not happy for anything of Ramaphosa, because you look now, when I take you back from COVID-19 scandals, previous scandals, no one of ANC held accountable. Gadimia is still there, and then now if they have a issue of intervening, here is the Secretary General standing and defending as the same as they were doing when Zuma get allegation in the parliament. They used to do this, to defend. After they see now, we are lost Jacob Zuma on the January 18 in Bombay Stadium in Nelspruit. Sikilang Balula come out and say we used to defend Jacob Zuma, say that thing was not it was a dam. We said it's a swimming pool. You see, so from now Ramaphosa, he left his 4 years to step down. When I calculate from 2009 of Jacob Zuma until Ramaphosa stepped down, South Africa it was just a running without a president because they didn't do nothing to South Africans.
All right. Lerotodi out in Kempton Park, feeling very strongly about that sentiment, right? That, getting a sense that he believes the president cares more about foreign nationals in the country than he does about South Africans. Butana, good morning.
Good morning, my sister. Good morning.
Have you had your rooibos?
I did. Yes, my. You know what? Thabo Mbeki, before the election, May 29, he told us that the branches of the ANC are run by crooks. Is this configuration going with that? Remember, this ANC is serving crooked run organization. At some point, they told us that they are self-correcting. What is this configuration? And the President Ramaphosa, he told us during January statement, by the way, we are no longer going to implement NDR because we don't have majority. What is this NDR? Why are they using complicated language? Why can't they implement this NDR in Northwest because they've got majority there? Eastern Cape, they have a majority. Therefore, they've got majority. Why can't they implement those things there? Why can't they the economy? Now they are blaming the doctors. The doctors have to fend for themselves. Yet it is a crooked ANC that has run this economy down. The tender crooks are left off the hook. The minister in presidency is figured that he has a problem of 2.5 million and is sitting with the intelligence. It's the type of the ANC. They don't know why here in Gauteng that we have removed them in government and we put them in 40%. They don't know that. This street, they can't even fix it. They've changed time and again the contractors there, and those contractors, they walk away with money, and they are not being taken to task. 11 billion rand project, they walk away from that project. Can they solve those things? Can they focus on that? Why are they always focusing on themselves? But they can't do anything.
Okay.
They have the whole country.
Okay, Butana out in Rosebank. Yeah, I guess then it's going to take a lot more than reconfiguration of the PECs to bring back the trust of some South Africans into what the ANC can deliver. Well, it's 10 o'clock. Time for the latest news.
In our top stories, unemployed doctors plan a national protest to the finance minister and Kochta to engage unions over CWP workers. Good morning. The South African Medical Association Trade Union SAMATU says it's now taking its fight to get unemployed doctors placed directly to the finance minister. This follows a series of protests that have taken place in various provinces, with one taking place in the Eastern Cape yesterday to highlight the plight of unemployed doctors and also prove that there's a solution to delayed services in public health facilities. SAMATU's General Secretary, Dr. Cedric Sihlangu.
There'll also be a national protest to the finance minister on the 31st of January, because by and large, all these issues pertaining to unemployment of doctors, if you go to the Minister of Health, he'll tell you that it's a finance issue and he's trying to discuss with the Freestyle Treasury. If you go to the MECs, they'll cite that it's a fiscal constraint issue. So as a result, the national leadership of SAMATU has decided to take this to the doorsteps of the finance minister. It's simply to raise the plight not only of unemployed doctors, in fact, the lack and understaffing of these clinics and hospitals directly impact accessing adequate healthcare services to these communities.
Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velinkosini Hlabisa will engage with labour unions this week to explore solutions to continue supporting community work programme participants aged 55 and older despite budgetary constraints. This follows his decision to extend contracts for these participants until the end of March. In August, Hlabisa announced his department would end the participation of programme workers aged 55 and older by the end of this month due to budget cuts. Hlabisa says his department, along with the relevant stakeholders, will be exploring viable and sustainable solutions.
This Friday, I'm meeting COSATU and SAMU so that in the next coming 2 months, we must find an amicable solution. For instance, there are participants who are 60 years and above already receiving the old age grant. We must consider that what if we relieve those people, they are amounting to 33,000, and ensure that those who have not yet received the grant, who are turning 60, we assist them quickly to register and qualify.
The 2 men arrested in connection with the mass shooting at a local tavern in Pinar east of Mbombela are expected to apply for bail at the Kabokweni Magistrates Court in Mpumalanga. 6 people were fatally shot while 6 others were wounded and 2 succumbed to their injuries in hospital. Mduduzi Lubisi and Bongani Nkosi are facing 8 counts of murder, 2 attempted murder, robbery and possession of unlicensed firearms. 7 of the 8 victims were laid to rest in different places over the weekend, while 1 victim has still not been claimed. The Judicial Conduct Tribunal probing sexual harassment allegations against Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge will continue to hear evidence from the complainant Judge's Secretary Andiswa Mengo. Mengo has accused Mbenenge of sexual harassment in the form of in-person interaction and electronic interaction between June 2021 to November 2022. Yesterday, she testified that prior to lodging a formal complaint, she proposed a round table with other judges to address the judge president and stop the alleged advances and seek the judge's intervention.
Ndandifuna uba ezijaji ndizicelileyo zikwazi uintervene zive lento yebisenziwa nguJP eqhubekeka.
I wanted these judges whose presence I had requested to intervene and also to hear these things that were being done by the JP.
And finally, the South African Medical Research Council has hailed the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's announcement of a groundbreaking plan to limit nicotine levels in cigarettes to minimal or non-addictive levels. If implemented, the move would make the U.S. the first country to take such drastic action to combat smoking-related diseases and deaths. The proposed rule would cap nicotine levels in cigarettes and other tobacco products. Senior specialist scientist at the South African Medical Research Council, Dr. Catherine Ekbe, says a ban on flavoured nicotine products would also go a long way in combating nicotine addiction.
At low levels, the amount of nicotine delivered to the smoker becomes insufficient to sustain addiction. And the game changer aspect of this kind of ruling is that there will be reduced addiction, because we know that nicotine is the addictive drug that keeps people smoking. The main work in the cigarette is to keep people addicted to the product. So imagine that if 80 to 90% of people started smoking when they were teenagers, you are going to take off that number or really reduce it drastically. Another proposal is the ban on flavors, because research has shown that young people get drawn to these products because of their flavors.
Recapping the top story, the South African Medical Association Trade Union Samatu says it's now taking its fight to get unemployed doctors placed directly to the finance minister. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 7 after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the Talking Point. Coming up in this hour, it is a Tuesday, so we'll be talking finance with Brian Hirsch. We will be focusing specifically, though, on education and funding higher education, given some of the challenges that we are seeing in the higher education sector. So Brian has got some good financial advice for us in terms of making decisions around that. Before we get into it, lots of WhatsApp voice notes from the open line. We'll play some of them now and then get into our finance chat.
Good morning, Katie, and your producer and all the listeners of SAFM. Katie, I like to congratulate Mr. President Donald Trump. You see, that president is, I really love that guy, like really. I'm starting to follow him now on social media. That guy is very, very, very clever, man. You know, I like the statement that he said, put American people first. South Africa also is supposed to learn to that president, because South Africa, they love some of the countries before they love us. A lot of people, they're struggling here in South Africa, but they don't care for us. Sia from Cape Town, thank you.
Good morning, Cathy and SAFM listeners. Now, the problem with the still consenting is finally starting to show. Why did they ever stop the food? It was supposed to be a money thing. What else did they expect besides the people still working there? And worse yet, if the stories are true that they were being forced, murdered, coerced into digging up more gold for the little food that did come in. Now the guys escaped. I'm betting you, he paid someone with gold-bearing material. What did they think was going to happen with all that time that they were just standing there? Why did they ever start with the food? Couldn't they have just started with the money? Take the money out of the equation first. You take the food out, you just force the person to think of other plans. Now we have a dangerous man on the loose with some gold-bearing material to some unknown value from forced slave worker.
Good morning, Katie and SAFM listeners. Katie, I have a proposal here, or I have a plea. The same way that we hear a lot about Donald Trump and the UK governance in other countries, can you please dedicate a day where you can tell us more about Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, as to after he took over, what is good that he did on that country and everything. Can you just do that for us? This is Luzuko from Cape Town. Thank you.
Morning, Cathy and Bume from Cape Town. You know what amuses me about Trump is how it's more the wording and the manner in which he does things that seems to get people worked up. Because what he does often is not different from what others do, but it's the way he says it. So it's normal, for example, for an incoming administration to actually remove political appointees. It's normal, you know. We have it here, a lot of DGs and so forth. Well, not DGs, but a lot of ministerial advisors and so forth. Actually, their terms coincide with the term of the minister, but they just don't say the term, you've been fired. And that's what seems to catch the thing. But to be honest, a lot of what he does, if he didn't use the flamboyant language, would be pretty normal.
Morning, Kathy, Nora in Heidelberg. You know, reading on the news pages, I've just been seeing a lot of comments with people being happy that Trump is in power in the US. He will punish South Africa for their stance in Palestine, the corruption, and take AGOA away, and so on. I think a lot of people, because they hate the ANC so much, or the politicians and so on, they fail to understand that if that happens, we all suffer. The whole country suffer, including them. Doesn't matter who you voted for. We all gonna suffer as a country, and politicians are not gonna suffer because they already stole our money and stuffed it in their bank accounts. So I don't know what people are happy about, or they just can't see past their nose. The whole country is gonna suffer, not just the politicians. It's just very strange.
Cathy. Good morning, Cathy. How can we trust people that has never gone to jail for the actions they've stolen from our coffers and they've never been jailed? And those that are implicated in the Zono Commission, they are still in charge. So how can we trust the ANC again? Thank you.
A very good morning to you, Cathy, and a wonderful crew. I think ANC is shooting itself on the foot by disbanding both KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng structures. They will forever regret that decision because it looks like they no longer have thinking tanks, the likes of Joel Nestitenze and others. I thank you, Lota Emonti.
Morning, SAFM. Morning, Cathy. From Klerksdorp. I think I must go and report you to my nearest police station here in Klerksdorp. You forgot something fundamental to play American national anthem. The eating the dogs, the eating the cats. Remember? That's our new national anthem in America. Okay, but like I said, I wanted to say anyway, it's I like what he says because he is very direct, he is very decisive. It does not really matter whether his decisions are wrong or right, but you need leaders like who mean what they say. It does not matter whether it's wrong or right, but when they mean what they say and they do it. That's the kind of leaders you need. Thank you very much.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, it's time for Brian Hirsch. Brian, a very good morning to you.
A good morning to you, Cathy. I chickened out coming to the studio this morning with those steps.
You are forgiven, Brian.
Actually, they're so narrow,
forgiven.
and walking up is fine, but walking down, and I can't at my age afford to fall. But I'll certainly be there next week.
The real problem, of course, is the fact that you have to take the stairs in the first place, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it, but walking down, walking up, you're very careful. Walking down, the steps are narrow, and there's padding on the steps, so I just got to be very careful. The last thing I want to do is fall.
All right.
But
well,
Cathy,
Brian is completely understood. We continue to live in hope.
Well, we had some interesting conversations, and I heard your program about Trump and what Trump had to say. The world is now waiting for this man to be Miracle Man. And he, this time with Trump coming in, I think the world is for him. Whereas when he came in 2016 and when he was appointed in November 16, I think the world wanted him to fail. I think the world wants him to succeed. And I can tell you there's an interesting snippet this morning, which I'll read it to you. It says, "Oil slips as Trump expected to loosen Russian export curbs. Oil prices fell as expectations of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump relaxing curbs on Russia's energy sector in exchange for a deal to end the Ukraine war offset concerns of supply disruption from harsher sanctions." So obviously, he wants to put tariffs on and do all things. But for us, if America does well, and it certainly will affect the world. So let's hope he succeeds. We want the oil price to come down. The oil price trading at above 80 at the moment is concerning, but the rand is strengthening a little bit. The rand has come down from the 1914 mark last week. It's trading at around about 1860. We'll hear the number in a moment. So that's very good for us. But Cathy, I wanted to just mention, I did receive an email, and I won't mention the name of the company simply because of advertising concerns. But the email says how to prepare your student loan application and rising demand. And we're aware that over 300,000 people have got the right to apply for bachelor's degrees, but there are only 200,000 positions available. And so one needs to say, well, what's going to happen? We've always said to kids, when you get the right to go to university, and then we don't have places. But more important is how are students going to fund some of their costs? And I just think that just to not to go through this article, but I think students need to talk to their banks to see what are their banks prepared to do. What is important is when is the best time to apply for a student loan? How do you go about that? And then what are your loan options? I mean, that is critical with your bank. You need to talk to them about it. And then all about what documents you need. But I think kids need to understand that if you can't afford the university, you've got to talk to your bank, get your parents to talk to the bank, and find out what the requirements are, because we want to encourage as many of the kids who've got passed with the right to go to university and apply for bachelor's degrees, that they're able to do it. It doesn't mean at the end of the day you're automatically going to come out of university and find a job. That's another problem. You need to think at university, how entrepreneurial can you be? You need to think of things you can do if you're not able to enter the formal workplace. So those are things that our students need to think about.
Look, and I guess, Brian, these are never really easy conversations, right? Because on the one hand, you have the highest number of students applying for NSFAS. That's the student loan scheme, the government student loan scheme. And of course, if they're sitting with over 900,000 applications at this point, they obviously are going to be students that aren't able to get that funding. And then we always talk about the missing middle. And it seems to me that these are often then the children or the students that are going to have to go to institutions such as your banks to try and get student loans. Now, do we know what the culture around student loans in this country is? Because the impression is that for a long time, it was simply inaccessible, at least for the majority of students, due to the requirements that banks need before they can actually give you a loan. So what do we know about some of those requirements and whether or not they have changed, they've been adjusted at all to make student funding a lot more accessible?
Yeah. Well, look. In my understanding, there are three different options that are offered. The first is what they call security-backed student loan, and this is very much where the loan is dependent on whether you're working at the time or not. The second is what they call self-assured student loan, and that's for part-time students who also are employed. And then you've got a loan without surety. And the surety, someone's got to provide, and there's also an amount of money with what they call gross household income below a certain figure, and then it's also depending when it's available, because it's not always available in first year. It may be available in later years, and then you need to understand the surety. But you need to understand that the surety coming from an income-earning adult has to have a minimum monthly income. So the banks look at all these things, but they need to go, and the point is they need to go and talk to their banks now. The sooner they talk to the banks, the sooner they will know what their position is, and the banks will let them know what their requirements are. They can go to their Standard Bank, ABSA, I would imagine Capitec, First Rand, RMB, Nedbank. So I think you've got to engage with your bank, but don't just leave it and think it's going to happen. If you don't make it happen and make things go, there are people who make things happen. There are people who think they make things happen. There are people who don't know what is happening, and there are people who ask what happened. So be one of those who makes things happen and visit your bank.
Even with the loans that are offered by NSFAS, there's always an issue in terms of the repayment rates. And, of course, the interest on the NSFAS loan is a lot more contained. Yeah. But what are we seeing with the traditional banks? And one just wonders, right, is it really... Is one setting themselves up for failure, for financial failure in the future, going to traditional banking institutions to get these loans? Because I don't know that they necessarily offer better interest rates? I mean, do they treat students differently than they treat anybody else walking in the bank? Are there special interest rates that are given to students?
Cathy, each bank will have its own requirements and its own different rates. But what is important is, you need to understand what documentations you are involved in and what you're providing. The documents for students, like South Africans, definitely got to be a South African ID. You've got to give them where you live, your household gross income, because it's household gross income, your academic results, and all those things that go with it. Because remember, for all students, it's not just about the university, and then their books you've got to buy and all those things. But every bank would have a different thing. The banks are meant to be institutions that welcome future workers in South Africa. And if I think about how Investec started, and I'm going back now, maybe 40, 45 years, maybe even 50 years, very clever what they did to start with. They lent money to dentists to buy their equipment, because they realized that once a dentist was in practice with his equipment, he wouldn't be able to operate without having his equipment. So they found they could lend money to individuals who they knew they had some lien on what they were providing the money for, and in this particular case, with dentists, was the actual equipment, and so that's how the Investec plan came to be in all those years ago, then developed into different other companies and takeovers. But the banks, I know, you can't don't just go into a bank and think you're going to get money. You need to go in and find out what do you need to make an application. That the bank will do gladly. And then you need to discuss it with your family to see, is it feasible? Who in the family is going to sign surety for you? In other words, guaranteeing that the money will be repaid. And I would imagine, those with good results and good personalities need to also think about selling. You are selling to a bank because you want money. So it's all those things. But you need, all I'm suggesting this morning is get started. Don't just leave it. Start going to see the banks to see what they can do. And I would imagine all of them have different divisions.
And when it comes, Brian, to the surety that banks will often ask for, especially where they need a guardian or somebody else to sign with the student so that, should there be an instance where one is not able to repay back the loan, then that option would kick in. What are the options that are available to guardians in as far as raising that surety and what they can put up as surety? Is property the only option?
Well, property is always a difficult one, because remember, if you want to claim money from a property, you've got to register a bond. There's cost of bond registrations. Some banks may allow a property to be put up as a surety, but endowment policies. Understand now with the two-pot system under your pension fund, the bank may also allow. That you've got a one-off 30,000 under the two-pot system of monies that was invested as of September 2024. If you haven't made use of the 30,000, you could probably use that as a surety. There's another aspect, because every year, this is for parents who are working, parents who are now contributing to pension or provident funds. 2/3 is going into the pension component pot, and 1/3 is going into the savings pot. So every year you're going to have an opportunity to draw, and this is sensible. I'm so against the two-pot system, and I'm waiting for the latest numbers to see what has been, how many people have drawn money. But I always say, draw for a reason, don't draw for ridiculous reasons. But certainly making use of the two-pot system, or being future contributions, or the values, the one-off percentage that you can take up to a maximum of 30,000. That's very, very. Anyone came and asked me and say, would I think that's a good idea? And if it's a question of getting your child educated, I'd say go for it, definitely, because ultimately you need to educate your child. You need to get your child off away from your cost center, and make sure that you provide your kids with an opportunity going forward.
All right. So then we do have other options that we could be looking at, right?
Yeah, and particularly people, who have never thought about the two-pot system. There for education, I don't encourage it. Maybe to offset unsecured debt, where you're paying ridiculous rates of interest. Remember your pension fund's going to achieve 8 or 9%, and some funds maybe achieve a little bit more. So instead of paying it to a bank, taking it out. Yes, it's going to affect your ultimate retirement, but it's going to give your kid what your kid needs in getting that education.
When you look at the cost of borrowing on an average basis, Brian, for parents and learners who are in this position now, is it better for people to hang 10, hold off going to school while their parents and guardians try and save up? Or is it, advisable, is it better to take out a loan, bearing in mind the future cost of repaying that loan?
Look, there's no better time to take a loan for education. You've got to build it into your budget, but your kids have now matriculated. We've always said to them, get a university degree and the world is your oyster. We haven't found it that way for so many people who have got degrees and can't find jobs. That is government's responsibility to try and grow our economy so that we can build businesses need new employees. It's very, very difficult because we've seen companies closing down. We've seen ArcelorMittal who's talking about retrenching 16,000 people. So it's a sad one. But I can say, there are many ways you can take a loan. Don't take a loan. The one area I'm encouraging people to take a loan, and I repeat it again, is to help educate. Sorry, Cathy. To help with your children's education.
All right, okay, Brian. You see, just because you're not in studio doesn't mean your phone mustn't be on silent. Hey?
Yeah, I normally don't bring my.
The same rules apply.
I normally don't bring my phone into the studio, but it's on my desk. We got rid of that. Yeah, Cathy. Before we go,
yes.
There were unless you want to do it in the next segment, there's a couple of carry forwards from last week that I promised to come back to people. One was the MTN question, MTN Zakili, which is a share scheme that came into about some years ago. Do you want me to deal with it? We got time before the break?
No, let's do this. Let's rather take the latest news headlines, and then I'll also give you an opportunity to touch on some of the issues that were raised last week. So there you heard it then. That is Brian's advice. We know that, hundreds of thousands of families are in this position of having to decide what exactly the future of their children is going to be when it comes to financing their education. And if you are one of those that is currently having to choose whether or not your child applies for a student loan, whether they stay home, what are the options available, then Brian is available to give you advice. Please call in on 086 000 2032 is the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, that number is 0614 104 107. So we'll be taking those calls and questions for Brian after the latest 10:30, not 11, 10:30 news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines on SAFM, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. Government has tabled a new wage offer of 5.5% for public sector employees. The employer met with labour unions at the Public Sector Coordinating Bargaining Council for a revised offer after the workers rejected a proposed 5% salary increase. The South African Medical Association trade union says that it is now taking its fight to get unemployed doctors placed directly to the finance minister. And there's a tense calm in Gaza as the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel holds into a third day. Hamas has confirmed that it will release the next Israeli hostages on Saturday in exchange for Palestinians held by Israel. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 65 to the dollar, 22 rand 86 to the pound, and 19 rand 33 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JC mainly higher in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are muted. Gold is trading at $2,726, platinum $941 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $79.95 a barrel.
Assurance, they understand my business. They are so good in terms of communication, which gives me confidence. It's a good decision that I've made to move to Assurance. I'm a winner. I want to be with the winners.
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
We continue talking finance with Brian Hirsch. Of course, I'll also take your questions for Brian, especially if those questions are related to funding higher education for your children and how you can go about doing that. Of course, you're not restricted. You can ask Brian any other question when it comes to financial matters. We'll take those calls on 086 000 2032, on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. So, Brian, before I bring in our listeners, maybe an opportunity then for you to touch on the feedback that you wanted to give from last week.
Yes, I had very nice feedback from the courses I want to run. Just to recap, I suggested, particularly for students and for new first-time matriculants, that we start to educate them a little bit more on finances. There were 3 ideas I had. The first was, do they want to be linked up to our morning notes, which will give them information on markets and what's been happening in the world, all the headlines. Secondly, what reading material would they like to be aware of? And then thirdly, I suggested that in March I'll start running courses for individuals on financial planning and aspects and all the different aspects. I said I would do it either in person if there was enough demand, or I would do it on Teams or one of the other type of programs if not sufficient demand. I've had a very, very nice group of people have come back to me, and I just want everyone to know that if they really are interested in any of these components, please to send me, and this is also now no longer, I don't have a radio line any longer. Any radio questions you want, you can please send to www.bhca.co.za. That was the one comment I wanted to make. The second comment in, I had someone ask me about MTN Zakili, and I did some research on it, and I just want to comment on that. It was established as a BE scheme involving qualified black members of the public. It holds approximately 77 million shares, which is about 4% of MTN share issue. They had to extend the scheme by a further 3 years in November 24 to November 27. They hoped it would be an 8-year program, but it's now going to run for 11 years. Originally, anyone who was involved got a 20% discount on the inception with an entry price of 102. The share was trading at 128. The current share now is trading in August at 84.97, so it was what we call under the water. And so given the empty underperformance, why it was extended by a further 3 years, the board has ability to unwind during the 3-year extension, and it's trading on the BE portion of the exchange at R8.60 per share currently, and it looks like the original take-up price when issued was R20. So very disappointing scheme. If that's how markets go, you know, the whole telecom all the telecom companies really have been badly hit, and it's global. So I hope that helps that particular listener. And then I had a lot of people who called me because I mentioned the life file, and I just wanted to let them know again, the life file helps you to estate plan your estate, all the details you need. I've got a little booklet on it, and again, if anyone wants it, they can please send a note to www.bhca.co.za, and I'll let them have this little booklet which documents clearly all the things that should go in your life file. I hope that helps. Yes, Cathy.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian. Let me then get into the questions from our listeners for you. One question that has come in: would it be advisable for parents to refinance their property to pay for university fees, especially for parents who may not get approved for student loans?
Look, it's always a very difficult one to refinance your property. I have no problem with refinancing property as long as you realize don't extend the loan to the length of time you may still have on your bond. So if you've got a choice, where do I borrow money from? If you're going the cheapest loan you can achieve in terms of interest rates, I'm not saying long term it's the cheapest, but in terms of interest rates, is your bond. I mean, currently we've got a prime rate sitting at approximately 11.25. I understand that probably you can get half below prime, so 10.75%. If you know that need a certain amount of money, say you need 200,000 Rand and you refinance your property, you must pay that 200,000 Rand back into your bond as in the soonest time that you plan to borrow the money from any other source. So if you've got a 5-year time horizon that I need 200,000, then you must make sure that you're paying back that 200,000 within the 5 years and not extending it in terms of the term of the loan. So then that's the cheapest money, because if you took that money on a 5-year loan, depending, you may pay a lot more. And here, as you pay it back, so the interest is less. So I have no problem with using a bond, but you need to be very, very careful, and you need to understand what you're doing, and you need to be very diligent so that you don't extend the loan from a 5-year or 3-year loan to a 15 or 20-year loan for the length of your bond. You need to, again, talk to your bank about that.
Sure, Brian. I'm just thinking about that advice that you've given. Of course, many people would look at that as an option because it's attractive, because you can extend it to the term of your actual bond.
Yes, I mean, then it becomes very costly debt. Mm-hmm. I'm just comparing taking a loan for 5 years from point A to a point to taking it out of your bond for 5 years. But if you were taking a loan for 5 years, you'd have to repay it over that 5 years. Mm-hmm. So the loan in your bond, don't extend it to the term of your bond. Just make sure you take it maybe in your mind, I'm going to pay it back over 3 or 5 years, and make sure you add that to their bond payment. But you need to make sure that that's allocated to that additional loan. Yes, if you've got the security and you've got that asset, you've got what we call the amount in the bond, the value of your property equal to the bond you've had. So say you've got a property you bought for $1 million and you've got a bond of 500,000. If you qualify, you can increase that bond. But you need to understand what the requirements are, what the costs are, because increasing a bond and changing terms of a bond can cost money as well.
Okay, so basically do the maths and don't automatically assume it's going to work out cheaper.
It's one option.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Let me bring you more of our questions from our listeners. Of course, I'm taking your calls from Brian on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, you can send your voice notes, text messages on 0614 104 107. Here's a question on the voice notes for you, Brian.
Morning, Cathy. Ask me the gentleman there. I've been trying all these financial institutions to borrow me my finance for my studies that I'm doing with IQ, that's private institution. I'm doing human resource management there. Now all these people, they are declining my loan application. How can I be helped? Kabelo Mokoti Extension 19, thank you.
Okay, will you send me your details as I said, I'll repeat them again, www.bhca.co.za, and I will give you direction where maybe you can go. I'll put you in touch with someone who may be able to help you.
Yeah, I'm also curious to know. It's just that Brian, of course, sent that question on the WhatsApp voice note. I'm curious to know what reasons they would have given for the decline. Do you know, Brian, some of the reasons that people perhaps are often rejected when it comes to student loans?
Well, one of the abilities is your age. What you've been doing? Are you working? You want a loan for studies? Can you afford it? If you're working, if you're not working, what security do you need to provide? Who's going to provide that surety? So let that caller make contact with me, and I will report back in the next few weeks about what I've gleaned.
And in terms of then the actual institutions, because there is another element of the debt that we often don't talk about, which is when individuals have been unable to pay the fees and that account remains open. With some institutions of higher learning, it is an interest-bearing debt. And so ultimately, people still then find that they're owing these institutions lots and lots of money. And sometimes when they start working, they don't go back to start repaying. And Brian, I wonder what advice you would have in managing that, right? Because if you're just starting out your career, it always seems better to at least get yourself on solid footing before you can go and deal with that outstanding debt.
Cathy, this is a global problem where people end up owing money to institutions for financing their education. It's not confined to South Africa. It's global. If you look at statistics in Europe, you look at statistics in the UK, maybe the cost of education in pounds and dollars and euros a lot less. But people go back, and for years they pay back the student loans. So again, you need to understand when you take a loan, how are you going to repay that loan? It's exactly the same if you finance a motor car. How have you got enough income? And under all the requirements, you need to satisfy the institution who's lending you the money that you will have the ability to repay the loan. They've got no problem with you repaying the loan when you go to work. However, if if you are working, that's even better. If you want to study part time, but I think what's on the cards is the institution needs to satisfy themselves that they've got a chance of getting the money back, and also depending on your results and depending again on what you plan to study. I think these are all considerations that the institution will make. But there's no getting away that money has to be repaid.
Are there courses that lend themselves to financing or to easier accessibility to financing in your experience?
Cathy, as part of my curriculum that I've suggested that people attend from March, I would include that, and so these are now kids who have just come out of university, just come out of school, like first year university, they've got the right to free education. These are the things that students need to understand what is in for it, and one of the big things is how are you going to go about further studying, when you no longer are entitled to get free monies from, what's a NEFSAS?
All right. Okay. All right. Thanks for that, Brian. Let me bring in more of our listeners here in terms of the questions that they're sending through for you this hour. Of course, the number to dial 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, you can send those questions on 0614 104 107. Okay. This one says, "Morning, Cathy. I want to know whether banking institutions will be able to assist me if the only income I have is from my tenants. I've got 2 tenants who have rented rooms." And that's a message from Brian in Ivory Park.
Brian, it's not just about the rent you get, it's what do you do with that rent, what comes out of that rent. And this is where I talk about budgeting. It's not only budgeting for students, everyone should be budgeting what you've got income coming in, you've got expenses, hopefully your income exceeds your expenses. So when you approach a bank and you've got rental income coming in, then you need to be satisfy the bank that this is my income coming in, these are my expenses, and I'll have sufficient enough to pay my loan. So it isn't, when you go to an institution, it's not just how much rent's coming in. You need to do that budget. What is the cost of food, what petrol, if you've got a bond, what's the cost of bond, and if your numbers are in the positive, you've got better chance of getting a loan than if it's not.
Bramoro is asking, he says, please ask Brian, I'm out of Mzansi for the next 5 months. I have about 5K in my bank account. What investment package can I enroll with respectable returns in 5 months or a year?
Okay, well, you can't take on any growth assets because growth assets have risk. And, if you're looking for growth, you need anything at 5 years and upwards because markets go up, markets go down, whether it be in equity or property markets. But if you've got a 1 year time horizon, then perhaps there's nothing better than just to get your bank to provide you with maybe a fixed deposit. And different banks will give different rates, but rates of around between 8% and 9% you should get. It's not taxable because everyone, if you're under the age of 65, the first 22,800 Rand of interest bears no tax. So on the 5,000 Rand, you'll earn somewhere in the order over the next 12 months, you'll earn around about 450 Rand. That's the best you can do without taking any risk. Don't go into any fancy schemes. Don't listen to anything that just sounds to be good, because often if it sounds to be good, it is too good to be true.
All right, thanks for that. Let me go to Mbombela. Ruben, good morning.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning. Can you hear me, Brian?
Morning, Ruben. I can hear you clearly.
Perfect. Brian, let's try and say, if we go with 200,000 students wanting to go to university, let us spread the 200,000 to all our local national banks and say they qualify for the loans of roughly 500,000 for that 4-year degree, 5-year degree, whatever the case may be. Now, are we saying that those 250,000 learners will be indebted to these national banks for the first 10 years of their working lives, paying back the loans? That's your one. Secondly, let's go with the two-pot system. I heard you remark you don't like it. Thank you for that. I also don't. However, let's go with the number of people who might be facing retirement in the next 3, 4, 6 years, who want to fund their students, their children through the two-pot system. As it's full of potholes, pardon the pun. However, I'm saying for a person who depends on the two-pot system to fund his or her child at university, and in the next 3, 6 years, they are retiring, won't the bank, won't SARS require their money from the two pots before they release the retiree and have him or her access her money? So if we go the banking funding route, our students, our learners, the children who are going to go get their funding through the banks are in for a long ride with the repayment process. If we go the two-pot system, the retiree who retires in the next 6, 7 years will be owing the bank. But that will impact the child at university. Brian, your input, please.
You're absolutely correct. Any money you take out of your retirement fund is going to affect your ultimate retirement pot. And you need to understand, you spoke about 4 to 5 years. That's not going to be as material as someone who takes out 30,000 now and takes out the second pot, which is the 1/3 that future contributions from the 1st September is going to have an impact on your retirement. But if you've got no choice, if your back's to the wall and it's all about education, I'm suggesting that is one place you could take money out to educate your child, because you've got a cost of that child at home, and the longer the child stays at home, obviously it's going to come out of your expense. It's going to be a part of your expense budget. So I'm saying is, which is better? It's Hobson's choice. Neither is a good idea, unfortunately. So that is one option, and I prefer the two-pot system than going and taking money from unsecured lending or from any other parties where interest rates are high. I mean, interest rates on your credit card today are anything between 18 to 20%, whereas you're going to lose out on the two-pot system where your fund may be achieving 9%, which is half the performance that the debt you're going to pay. Your second point about, yes, unfortunately, globally, kids come out of school, they come out of university, they get a job, and they pay back for many, many years in terms of the funding. But there is no other choice. I mean, we do have now students coming into university for the first time. We do have a system where it should be paid for by the state as agreed, and as has been happening. Obviously, it's got its own problems, but I make the point, what other choice does one have if you need to educate your child and you don't have money? Or again, if you're going to provide surety to a bank on behalf of your child in terms of funding their universities. I know it's a very difficult one for so many of these kids who have now passed exams and matriculated, and they're now looking to go to university, and guys who are looking even further ahead. They now maybe in 3rd or 4th year, and they need to now fund their education. So I'm just saying, where you have no choice, I'm saying the two-pot system may be one of the better options, although it will have an impact on you ultimately at retirement. But when you say 5 years later, I'm funding my child and now I'll put more into a retirement fund, you also need to realize you've lost out what they call the 8th wonder of the world. You've lost out the power of compound interest, which is your contributions being paid every year, and interest on interest and interest. You need to do the calculations and see which is the best option. Hope that helps. Hope that answers your question.
All right.
Kathy, 3 minutes here. Kathy, can I hijack you for a second, please?
Brian. 1 second.
Thank you. Brian, factor in economic performance vis-a-vis the qualification of learner X or student X at varsity, and the fact that his or her parents, Kathy spoke earlier of collateral surety, right? Factor in then the performance. If then learner X has finished his or her degree, they don't have a job, they are owing a bank this zillions of rands, then the surety which Kathy spoke about in terms of current property, blah, blah, blah. How do you factor in those things? Because the bank will say to learner X, you owe us.
Yeah.
You owe us and you don't have a job. Your parents stood collateral or surety for you 6 years, 9 years ago. Now, what happens to that collateral, that surety that Kathy spoke about? Thank you very much, Brian.
Okay, well, it will be called up. That surety will called up. But when you enter into education loans, when you enter into student loans, these are all the factors that you need to get from the institutions to get prepared to lend you the loan. What is the repayment? How do you repay it? When I'm now working, what percentage of my salary do I need to pay? And then if I don't have a job, what happens? Those are questions that you need to get in terms of from the institution that you may be borrowing money from.
All right. Thanks for that. Really a great engagement there, Ruben, in Mbombela. And it really, again, Brian, highlights the need for us to understand the terms and conditions of what we are getting ourselves into. All right. I'm going to take one voice note for you before we wrap up our conversation.
Hello, good morning, Cathy, and hello to Brian.
Good morning to you.
I just want to find out, man, if you can ask Brian to assist. Has he had a look at platform Brockstock, and then what does he think about it? Because I've moved my investment in stocks from Easy Equities to Brockstock, and I'm in a position of trying to invest as much as I can. I'm looking at around maybe 6,000 to 10,000 every month, but I'm skeptical about Brockstock since it's a new platform, but I've seen good reviews about it. Just want to find out what Brian think about Brockstock. It's Mueketi in Durban. Thank you.
Brian?
Cathy, my answer to that caller is I need to evaluate. I know Easy Equities. I don't know the other platform he used. If he could please send me details, and to all the other people who might want to answer any questions or want any investment advice, they can call us on www.bhca.co.za, and please let that caller please send me an email, and then I'll get back to them and discuss it with them.
All right. Another question for you, Brian?
Hi, good day to you, Cathy, and to Brian. It's Scully. I, as a pensioner, okay, and I'm a pensioner. It doesn't bother me in any way. But just my input. This two-pot system for retirement and so on. It's a lot of confusion, man. Should just leave it straight as it is. It's okay. Like, to me, I think it's too confusion. Thank you.
Okay, so let me make a comment. It's not confusing at all. So let me help you. You made, as at the end of August 2024, you had an amount in your retirement fund, whether it be individual retirement annuity, pension, or provident fund. Let's assume that amount in total was 500,000. Anyone at that point in time can can release 10% of that 500,000, but with a maximum of 30,000. If you only had 200,000 in the fund at the end of August, you could borrow 10% of 200, which is 20,000. That's a one-off takeout out of your retirement fund, and that's why I'm saying I'm against it. However, there are times when I see feasibility. If I'm going to borrow money at 18%, and for my child, and I can take money out of my retirement fund at 10%, then that's what performance, assuming the fund's going to perform at that makes a lot more sense because I'm borrowing at that. The second component is your future contributions from the 1st September. Every year, whatever you contribute, 2/3 will go into the retirement fund, which you can't touch until retirement. 1/3 will go into the savings pot, and you can take the full 1/3 out every year as long as it's above 2,000 Rand. So I hope that clarifies. It's certainly not complicated. The procedure may be complicated, and the education on why or why not you should actually access the funds. I'm against it, but this morning, in terms of education, and I understand people need to, instead of borrowing money at ridiculous rates, and maybe you can't even borrow, it may be, and I repeat, may be an alternative to look at the two-pot system going forward, and that is a way of helping your children pay for the education where they need to be, where they're not getting government grants.
All right. Brian, we've come to the end of our time. That's where we're going to have to leave it for this morning. Brian, of course, back with us next week, Tuesday. On the other side of the 11 o'clock news update, we are going to focus on the state of education in the Eastern Cape, rather. Do stay tuned for that particular conversation.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Top stories at 11. Public sector offered a new wage offer and a fourth suspect arrested in the alleged murder of Qwaqwa police officers. And for SFM News, I am Ondalambana and a very good morning. Government has tabled a new wage offer of 5.5% for public sector employees. The employer met with labour unions at the Public Sector Coordinating Bargaining Council for a revised offer after the workers rejected a proposed 5% salary increase. The medium-term budget policy statement tabled last year makes a provision for a 4.7% salary increase for public servants. The workers' demands have been revised down several times from an initial 12% to now 6%. The Public Servants Association's Claude Naker says the new offer includes an improvement in non-financial benefits, with the parties hoping to conclude the talks before the February budget speech.
Currently, we have been offered that opportunity for 21 days to go back to our various membership and see if they're happy. As I've indicated, we have made significant progress. It's something that we can take back to our members. It's a more than tangible offer from where we were at 3% to 4.7 to 5 to 5.5. We have the housing allowance adjustment where they've decided to adjust it from around 1,700, just above 1,700 to 1,900, the base figure. Coupled with that, there will be an increase related to inflation for the housing allowance come July 2025. There's also an increase in the medical aid subsidy.
The South African Medical Association trade union, SAMATU, says that it is now taking its fight to get unemployed doctors placed directly to the finance minister. This follows a series of protests that have taken place in various provinces, with one taking place in the Eastern Cape yesterday to highlight the plight of unemployed doctors and also prove that there is a solution to delayed services in public health facilities. SAMATU General Secretary is Dr. Cedric Sihlangu.
There will also be a national protest to the finance minister on the 31st of January, because by and large, all these issues pertaining to unemployment of doctors, if you go to the Minister of Health, he will tell you that it's a finance issue and he's trying to discuss with the Freestyle Treasury. If you go to the MECs, they'll cite that it's a fiscal constraint issue. So as a result, the national leadership of Samato has decided to take this to the doorsteps of the finance minister. It's simply to raise the plight not only of unemployed doctors, in fact, the lack and under-staffing of these clinics and hospitals directly impact accessing adequate healthcare services to these communities.
A fourth suspect has been arrested in connection with the killing of two police officers from Qwaqwa in the Eastern Free State in January 4. Constable Sipho Mohapi and Yodine Mutlong of Namahadi Visible Policing in Qwaqwa were fatally shot while responding to a house robbery in Putadichaba. The latest suspect, a 29-year-old South African citizen, was arrested in Mangawong village in Qwaqwa yesterday. He was found in possession of a firearm, ammunition, a balaclava and a cell phone. Hawk spokesperson Cathy Mohlahlana says the other three accused, who include one Lesotho national, have already appeared in court for the murders of the two police officers, house robbery in possession of unlicensed firearm. Authorities have commended communities for assisting the investigating team on bringing forward the perpetrators to face the mighty arm of the law. There's a tense calm in Gaza as the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel holds into a third day. Hamas has confirmed that it will release the next Israeli hostages on Saturday in exchange for Palestinians held by Israel. The UN said hundreds of aid trucks had entered the territory yesterday. The BBC's Yolanda Nell has the details.
Even as the fragile ceasefire continues in Gaza, with the UN saying it was able to bring in more than 900 lorry loads of humanitarian aid yesterday, there is high anxiety among Palestinians and Israelis about whether the deal will hold. Speaking in the Oval Office, President Trump, who's taken credit for the ceasefire, didn't allay that, saying he wasn't confident that all three stages of the deal, which are supposed to lead to a full end to the war and Gaza reconstruction, would be implemented.
Recapping the top story, government has tabled a new wage offer of 5.5% for public sector employees. The employer met with labour unions at the Public Sector Coordinating Bargaining Council for a revised offer after the workers rejected a proposed 5% salary increase. I am on Lambana for SFM News headlines at 11:30.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mweketsi. The Soundtrack of Your Life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Soundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Kherika. Rhythm of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. This is SAFM.
Celebrate the festive season with SABC Plus. Register on the SABC Plus app or website and you could win 10 gigs of data per month over the period of 6 months, as well as stand a chance to take home one of 6 Samsung A05s smartphones. Entering is easy. Register on SABC Plus, complete the survey and simply SMS the keyword SABC Plus and your unique PIN code to 49979. It's that simple. Make this holiday season unforgettable with SABC Plus. Terms and conditions apply. SMSs cost R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
7 after 11 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final hour of the Talking Point. In this hour then, we're taking a closer look at the state of education in the Eastern Cape. Last week, of course, we had the official announcement of the country's matric results, and following that, we then focused on the Northern Cape, which of course still is registering the lowest numbers when it comes to the pass rate in the country. However, they did have a significant improvement for the 2024 academic year, increasing by at least 8 points when it comes to those results. Unfortunately, not far above them is the Eastern Cape. They, of course, are the province that has gotten the 8th position, so they're second from the bottom, and they achieved a pass rate of 84.9%. It is a result that has been welcomed by the local education officials in the Eastern Cape. In particular, the MEC Fundile Gade has commended the teachers and the unions in the province for a job well done. But we know that this is one of those provinces that, of course, continues to face a number of challenges when it comes to the provision and delivery of education. So we'll be focusing then on the state of education in the Eastern Cape. Let me welcome onto the show Vuyiseka Mboxeka, who is the spokesperson for the Eastern Cape Education MEC. Vuyiseka, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Ms. Mohlahlana, and good morning to the listeners of SAFM.
Vuyiseka, just to be clear, you speak on behalf of the Education MEC or on behalf of the department? Apologies for that.
Can you repeat that?
Do you speak on behalf? Do you speak on behalf of the Education Department or on behalf of the MEC?
On behalf of the Honorable MEC.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that clarity, Vuiseka. And then also part of this conversation, Lindo Guhle Msele, who is the project lead for Economic Opportunities Intervention at Shaping New Minds. It's an award-winning youth-led organization that seeks to advocate for equal education. They deal directly with high school learners. Lindo Guhle, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to the listeners. And just to clarify, I am speaking on behalf of Bumbingom, so HIV Prevention Project.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that clarity. And then we also have Johanna Reynolds, who is the head of education at ACM Education. Johanna, good morning.
Good morning.
Wonderful. Thank you all for making time for this conversation. Vuiseka, perhaps then to begin the conversation with you, and let's start with the obvious, right, which is the fact that, yes, the Eastern Cape is still in the bottom two, but certainly an average pass rate of 84.9% is really nothing to be scorned at.
Very true, Cathy. And from where we are seated as the department, we are very much happy of the performance. And I can say, in terms of our own targets, since 2019 as a department, we've been able to meet them. And more importantly, even though at a quantitative level we targeted 85% and we landed it at 84.9%, we are more excited by the fact that we've increased our qualitative output, which is we've increased the bachelor pass, moving from 31% that we had last year to 45% this year. And we have also seen a great improvement in terms of the new subjects that we have introduced in the province. It therefore means that the three-streamed model, that which we introduced as a department, is starting to yield positive results. And in terms of what is pronounced by the NDP skills development and the project of the country, at least we are making a contribution as a province. And from where we seated, we are certain that the more we push qualitative output, the more the province is going to be in a better pedestal. Because when you look at the qualitative analysis that was done by DPE, we are number 3. But in terms of quantitative analysis, that is position 1, position 2, we are number 8, which to us is not an issue because this is an academic process. And what must we do at all times is look at the qualitative input and also shaping the education of the Eastern Cape to respond to the needs and also to the opportunities that are presented by economies of the world.
Of course, what a moment like this provides is an opportunity, right, to reflect on what's working and what isn't working in the system. What we experience with the Eastern Cape is that we, of course, would have some of the challenges in the province be the ones that are often making headlines. You would have issues around the schooling infrastructure in the province, which is really, really one of the big challenges. And yes, we understand it's a province that is, the landscape is quite sparse, not always possible, right, to have enough schools in certain areas simply because of the landscape. But the issue of infrastructure, delivery in the province, it just seems to be one that the province can't shake, to the extent that we're seeing migration to other provinces, right? So in as much as you're sitting with an improved pass rate, there's still the overall issue that quite a significant number of young children that should be going to school in the Eastern Cape are simply not in those schools. Parents have opted to take them elsewhere into other provinces because of these challenges.
Partly, I would agree with you at a percentage, most probably of 45%. But more importantly, I will also raise the point that centrally, what is coming out as a reason for for different parents to leave the province is the issue of economic opportunities. And maybe I can raise the point, Ms. Mohlahlana, that it's not something that is peculiar to the Eastern Cape alone, because there are some schools in the Eastern Cape that are very good in terms of infrastructure, but still they do not have learners. And the reason why it is like that is because of parents, they migrate from different provinces for economic opportunities. And if I can just make an indication to you, between 2019 and 2023, in fact, in 2024, the Eastern Cape Department of Education has handed over 114 schools in different communities. And those 114 schools are schools that were built between 2017 and 2018. And I can tell you now that there are 32 mega schools, which is bigger schools that are being built by the Department of Basic Education in the province across the district, the 12 districts in the Eastern Cape. And those mega schools are going to see different schools closing because we are also reshaping the schooling system in the province. Because if you look at our own number of learners from grade R to grade 12, this year we are looking at 1.8 million. Something was far less than that when we started in the office in 2019. And the other thing that I can indicate is that we are seeing an improvement of numbers in the FET band, that is in the range of grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. And the reason why it's like that, Cathy, is because people are seeing the performance of the province and the parents that are returning their kids back to the province. And also there's a phenomenon that we're seeing where parents now are starting to have a confidence in the public system of education, where they take their kids from private schools to the public school. And the reason why it is like that is because of the policy change and the policy shift that the MEC is leading in the province, where we are giving more support to the rural schools, we are giving more support to quintile 1, quintile 2, quintile 3. Hence, if you look at the announcement of results, you'll find that schools that are learners that are coming from schools that are between quintile 1, quintile 2, quintile 3, they're the ones that were dominating the national announcement. In the Eastern Cape, the learner that is a top learner in the province is coming from Xolilizwe, a very poor school in the province, a school that is in a poor community, but the learner there was topping the school performance in the province. And even if you look in Gauteng, the learner that is a top learner there is coming from a community that is designed, that is described as destitute. So there's a lot that we are seeing, that which we are, that is as a result of a policy shift that we have done. And in this term, two things that are going to be ushered strongly and aggressively by the MEC is the content that which must give birth to more opportunities, and hence, therefore, last week on the 17th, we were launching an aviation school in Port Alfred, and also the quality of results, because we don't want to have more learners passing, but they can't access a tertiary institution because of point system and because of subject combinations.
Okay. Let me bring in then Lindo Gutle. Lindo Gutle, you do work in the Eastern Cape. You work with some of the province's young people. Perhaps your input then, in as far as what you understand, some of the challenges facing the Eastern Cape education system, and how would you overall describe the state of education in the province?
Thank you so much, Cathy. So as Mumbingom, so we are an HIV prevention project. We work by addressing the different drivers of HIV through behavioral, biomedical, social, and economic interventions. So one of the interventions that we have is the economic opportunities intervention. And of course, we can't address the economic opportunities part of things without addressing the education aspect. And so we assist young people with ensuring that they get career guidance. We have a second chance matric program that we run. We have online blended learning, etc. So what we've observed is we've been assisting young people with their applications for school and career guidance is that these young people still lack a lot of resources. They lack career guidance that aligns their passions, their performance with the labor demand and selection of subjects. So as Umumbingom, so what we try and do in that respect is to ensure that we provide these young people such assistance. So with the state of our education, what we have observed is that, of course, the primary role of the education sector is teaching and learning. But what we also have observed is that we need to start engaging young people about their careers and their education pathways at a very young age. Because that's where we see a gap now with young people who are studying, who are in school and selecting subjects and learning and not being aligned with what the labor demand is and aligning that with the future career trajectories. So we are focusing on awareness and information because we've also observed that young people like that, communities like that, and their parents like that. Young people don't know much about other educational pathways that are not, the traditional education routes that we have been accustomed to. And I think that's why there's such a misalignment between young people and what the needs are and young people being able to achieve their full potential after schooling. The schools are doing an amazing job. However, because the schools are a lot of the time in areas that lack resources, in areas that are really poor, then there's a gap, and that's where, as Mumbingom, so we try and fill the gap.
Lindokutle, what would you say are some of the more common subject combinations that you find learners having to deal with, and then you're of course trying to advise them on the back end of this, and sometimes it can be very difficult, right? Because subject choices do also limit one's ability to be able to access higher education. Yes, you may have passed well in those subjects, but the reality is it doesn't necessarily guarantee you a spot in an institution of higher learning.
Yes. So what we have observed, I think with a lot of schools, they have sort of streamlined subject choices that they have. So one of the things that we've observed is that some of the learners are sort of pushed into streams by parents or by the educators based obviously on their performance or what they see their potential as being. But what we've observed is that also there's a general combination of mathematical literacy and accounting that we've observed, and we get young people coming to our center wanting to apply, for example, to become accountants with a mathematical literacy and accounting combination, which is really misleading for these young people because a lot of institutions do not take accounting with mathematical literacy. We also observed a lot of young people are in the stream of social sciences, where there's a combination of tourism, history, geography, or life sciences, and that sort of limits their career choices. And a lot of these young people are not really engaged with a pure mathematics stream, which is one of the streams that opens up more opportunities for young people, and that really affects them getting into their education, into courses that will be beneficial for them after higher education. I remember we had one of our weeks last year where we collected some of the data from the participants that were applying at our center, and out of 99 of those young people, 40 of them in just 1 week all wanted to apply for education. And none of them wanted to focus on the streams, on the in-demand streams. And so for us, it's really concerning, and that's where we come in and try and assist young people to sort of reimagine. We're not trying to make young people deviate from their passions or their interests, but what we're trying to do is for them to reimagine what the future careers would look like in those paths that they've selected, but also to have conversations with parents, because you find that there are young people that are struggling with your mathematics and your physics streams, but because those are the streams that will most likely get a young person a job, our parents are forcing these young people, and a lot of them, or some of them, are struggling with those streams. And so that's where we are trying to come in now with these different education pathways and career pathways for these young people, and to just help them to understand what the future of careers look like, and what then that means for them now while they're still in the schooling system.
Sure. Thank you so much for some of those insights that you have shared with us. And I think it's also something that will give Uvuyiseka an opportunity to respond to, right? How do we get things right from so much earlier on in the learning careers of these young people? Because by the time you get to grade 10, grade 11, it's too late. You're locked into your subjects, right? You're locked into your stream. So this is a conversation that has to be taking place right through from the transition from primary school into high school. Johanna, let me come to you and give you an opportunity then to weigh in. How would you describe the state of education in the Eastern Cape, and what are some of the learnings or observations that you can share with us as an organization that does work there?
So I think we work, I will say Axiom Education works exclusively with rural schools. We are based in the OR Tambo Inland and Amatole East District. So Kholelizwe is one of our neighboring schools. We don't work with them, but they're always an inspiration to us. Shout out Kholelizwe. I think our observation is that learners, the caregivers, the teachers, the schools are really highly invested in the success of our learners. Rural learners travel long distances. Sometimes, they move to attend a certain school. They're living away from parents in some cases, all in pursuit of this education thing. And at the end of the day, those strengths that they have, the weaknesses, the excitement, the hope, learners are learners, wherever they are. And the fact that some of our learners kind of experience in a rural area these unfair challenges, which make it a lot harder for them to access what comes next in their lives, is something that is all of our problem. We can't put that problem on the education department or on the school. And the way we see it is that is a communal issue. It's a community issue. And we want to create the enabling conditions and systems in which community members can assist, support in building up the schools in their very own areas. We partner with government employment schemes like the Social Employment Fund to equip and employ young people in the schools that they themselves attended to be facilitators of learning. In the foundation phase is Xhosa literacy, in the intermediate phase addressing maths backlogs. And really what we've noticed with that process is that learners need role models of people like them, young people who are taking what they've been given and creating something out of it. I love what's been said, this issue of purpose, agency, options. We want our children to leave school having those options in front of them. And maths, we can't run away from it. Maths is the key to that. In many rural schools, it's very difficult to attract and retain qualified maths teachers. And that means, we end up with these massive backlogs in mathematics coming up, from very early grades, and then the grade 11 and 12 teachers, work very hard to close those, but there's a lot to close. In a recent baseline, we found that none of the learners in grade 9 were able to perform in mathematics at grade 9 level. None of them in all our schools, and which is around 50 schools. So the issues are sort of broad as well as deep, but we do also see, and our experience is that The solutions are there in the people, in the communities around the schools, and it's a case of bringing the problem and the solution together.
I think that is absolutely, data that should make anybody stop and listen, right? If you have 50 schools where grade 9 learners are being benchmarked and none of them are able to perform at satisfactory levels in maths, that of course is a big warning sign, because when then is the work of getting them up to speed going to take place realistically, as you're saying, within the context of the education system and the challenges that so many of these rural schools are facing. So we're going to continue this conversation in a moment. And of course, I will also give Vuyiseka an opportunity to respond to some of these issues that are coming up, because it does seem that once you begin to look beyond just the percentages, 84.9%, what really is underpinning that 84.9%, that's when we get to really grapple with some of the issues at the core of the state of education, at least the true state of education, not only in our country's provinces, but also what is happening more broadly nationally. It's 11:30. It's time for the latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines, Judge's Secretary Andiswa Mengo has testified that she was not in a romantic relationship with Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge, nor did she ever consent to the alleged conduct by the top judge. The Stilfontein Solidarity Committee has lambasted the South African Police Services for allegedly being unwilling to admit the recently resurfaced illegal mine workers in Stilfontein in Northwest Hospital, and government has tabled a new wage offer of 5.5% for public sector employees. The employer met with labour unions at the Public Sector Coordinating Bargaining Council for a revised offer after the workers rejected a proposed 5% salary increase. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Let's look at perhaps the most common red flags that job seekers should be on the watch out for in order to avoid themselves falling victim to job scams.
First red flag I would advise people to look at is the upfront fees. In actual fact, anything that's related to you paying or there's a request for money. And we've seen so many people falling into scams of this, and this is one of the biggest scams that they use.
Lucas Mulefe, who is a cybersecurity consultant with ESET Southern Africa.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. All podcasts can be downloaded on safm.co.za. The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Is it fair to say that maybe Ramaphosa has gone silent at this point in time because he has so many domestic fires to put out in this rather unusual coalition called the Government of National Unity?
I think Ramaphosa and the ANC will regain some of their supporters and popularity if they dealt with the Zimbabwe problem, if they dealt with the political issue in Zimbabwe. If you look at what's happening in Mozambique now, Mozambicans are not cowardly like us Zimbabweans, so they've gone out to the streets. 250 people have died already fighting against the rigging of elections.
Hopewell Chinono, award-winning journalist.
This is the National Pulse on SAFM. All podcasts can be downloaded on safm.co.za.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're looking at the state of education in the Eastern Cape. Joining us for that conversation, Vuyiseka Mboxeka, who is the spokesperson for the Eastern Cape Education MEC, Lindogu Hlemsele, who is project lead for economic opportunities intervention, but is also representing one of the other organizations in this conversation, and Johanna Reynolds, the head of education at ACM Education, an NGO that focuses primarily on rural schools, especially when it comes to maths and in general maths literacy. So they've all brought in very different perspectives of what are the observations, what are the challenges that at least they've observed working with schools in that province. Vuyiseka, let me come back to you then and give you a chance to speak to some of these issues. Look, I would say that, you know, the issue raised by Linde Guhle of the subjects and the streams that are taken by young people, and how often this actually doesn't set them up for success in the pursuit of future careers. That is something that I would want you to respond to. But also what Johanna has raised about the gaps in particular in maths education, and how as a province then you intend on dealing with that, because both those issues speak to each other, right? So the fact that you have learners performing so poorly in maths begins to explain why the streams are structured in the way that they are. But the long-term outcomes of that, of course, it doesn't yield the best results for the province in terms of what happens to these children once they're actually done with school.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mohlahlana. Let me take you back on a debate that once ensued in the country, I think just after September last year. There was a debate which was as a result of a report that was done by TIMSS, an international body that was assessing countries and their own state of education. One of the things that were raised there was that there's a grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, that which they were said to be unable to read with meaning and comprehend. And at the center of that was an issue of language, because if you look at the teaching teaching policy in South Africa, is just one language in terms of the basic education, medium of instruction. You find that it's in English. And in the context of the Eastern Cape, 2012, we introduced the mother tongue bilingual writing. And the reason why we had that and piloted it in Chris Hani East on the side of Ingobo, Kofimvaba, is because we knew that a learner that speaks isiXhosa ekhaya, speaks isiXhosa esikolweni, and speaks isiXhosa eklasini, that person is likely to perform. And when we did a pilot, it gave us good results. Hence, therefore, when you look at the ranking of our own district, Chris Hani East, where we piloted the mother tongue bilingual, is number 1 in the province at 86%. And after we've done that, we've also sat back and understand that as the Eastern Cape, we've got features, we've got economic opportunities. And those economic opportunities, amongst them, it's maritime, and amongst them is aviation, and amongst them is robotics. And that is why today we do have a school in Port Alfred that deals with aviation, and we're starting at grade 10. And that is because we understand that some of the subject combinations that we have in different schools are not going to give our own learners opportunities economically, but are just by the subject combinations that are going to give a learner a certificate that becomes nothing if a person can't do anything with that. And that is why in this phase, in this term, one of the things that the MEC is speaking about now is the content and also the quality. And when I say the content, is how we align subject, that which must start at a GET phase, that is at grade 8. And there is a process now that we have adopted in the department, that which we must do quarterly training to our own teachers, so that as the system is changing and as there are new opportunities are coming, there are teachers that are able to respond to that. For an example, you and me, at the time we were at school, we didn't know anything called robotics, but now it's part of what is in the public, and it's part of economic opportunities that our own young people must tap into, and that is why in the province we have since introduced that. And lastly,
So Vuyiseka, I'm listening to the reasons that you're giving, right, in terms of this gap, because I don't want us to underplay this very big gap when it comes to the teaching of maths in the province. And you're primarily saying that the issue of the language that it's taught in is one of the fundamental issues. And an example just came to mind. You must have heard of Mbirwi High School. It's out in the Venda region in Limpopo. Now, that high school, year on year, produces some of the top results when it comes to maths and science in this country, right? And that's just to say that the challenges of language are not unique to the Eastern Cape. And we see other provinces perhaps being able to navigate that challenge better than what you are doing currently. So beyond, unless you're saying that there's a certain set of circumstances in the Eastern Cape around language in particular that make it incredibly difficult for the province to actually bring education or to actually teach maths, then perhaps would be faced in other parts of the country.
I would respond to you, Ms. Mohlahlana, by saying we've got a better performance in the province. We've got a better performance in the province in maths, in physics, in accounting, business studies, geography. And I am then saying one of the reasons that we have analyzed and assessed and came up with a conclusion is that we must take up language. And I can tell you one of the best performing schools in the country in terms of mathematics, it's a school that is in Qentane, the most rural side of our own province. And the other one is Sokaisa in Port Elizabeth. And one of the best teachers in the country in mathematics is coming from Amatole East, and it's Miss Kegu. So the point is, part of what we are accepting is that there is a lot of change that we need to do when it comes to the issue of language, when it comes to the issue of subject combination, and subsequently when it comes to how do we do away with certain elements that are no longer producing the results that which we desire, which then we introduce the training of teachers, because Asian way of teachers is not going to give you the results that you need, which must be of international standard. Hence, therefore, you hear now, as the province, we're talking about robotics, we're talking about aviation, we talk about maritime, and also we talk about the improvement of language across the board. And I've made an example to say, Chris Hani East, which is a district that started the language piloting, mother tongue bilingual language piloting in 2012, today is #1 in the province. And OR Tambo, I can tell you where the study was made, you've got two realities there. There is a portion of OR Tambo that speaks Isimpondo. There is a portion of OR Tambo that speaks isiXhosa. And it therefore means that when you cite a paper and you put it in English, both of those groupings would not be accommodated as they were if you were to speak directly their own language. That is why I am saying part of what we have accepted is that language is an issue in teaching, because a learner that is being taught Afrikaans and a learner that is speaking Afrikaans at home and a learner that plays with his peers and speaks Afrikaans is far better than a learner that has to switch language when he or she gets to school. Okay. And I'm then saying that is what we're doing as a province. It's because every quarter there's a study that we do, which we analyze the performance of system from grade R to grade 12, and we analyze where we have got red lights, because we've got quintile 1, quintile 2, quintile 3, and we must assess those quintiles every quarter.
Vuyiseka, speaking of those quintile 1 to quintile 3 schools, Both our guests have talked about the incredible social challenges that many of these children face just to be able to get an education. And you touched earlier on the delivery of new schools and the construction of new mega schools that are going to, reshape education in the province. I wonder, though, to what extent are all of these interventions dealing with the day-to-day experience of learners in the province, where getting an education really has to be the biggest focus of one's life, and parents and guardians are having to move mountains just to ensure that their children are in school. One doesn't get a sense that there is an overall effort to try and improve that experience for parents and learners, because it can't be in 2025 that children are still having to walk long distances, cross rivers, climb mountains just to get an education.
If I can tell you, Cathy, as you and me are speaking, the entire provincial government, MECs, are dispatched across 12 districts of Eastern Cape. They are assessing challenges that are faced by learners. And the reason why it's like that is because the Premier said when it comes to education, there needs to be a coordinated ecosystem, that which is going to respond mainly on three things. One, the scholar transport, the issue of uniform, and also the issue of school nutrition. But on the issue of uniform, I can tell you, as the office of the MEC and also as a department, we have got schools that we identify every year, wherein we go and distribute uniform, because Quintile 1, Quintile 2, Quintile 3, those are destitute schools, and we know that there are learners that will opt to drop a school because they don't have uniform. And also we've got a concept that which we introduced last year, where we identified 400 schools in the province, and we give them breakfast as a form of a nutrition, because we understand that one meal is not enough, because there are learners that solely depend on that one meal that they get in school. And also there is an instruction that was given by MEC Mvoko last year in the budget adjustment in November, where he said that there must be an increase of the scholar transport intake in this year, because we understand that you find that there's a family that has got 3 learners. They're going to one school, and the scholar transport will approve only 1 learner in that particular family and leave 2. And the MEC Mvoko said that this is a limitation and it pains government badly. And then he said he's ready to do a budget adjustment, which is likely to happen now in the budget adjustment of March. So the social ills are a issue of government, and that is why the Premier instructed all MECs that they must be on the ground this week, all of it, and then the following week
I'm going to pause you
come
there.
with a report.
I'm going to pause you there to give our other guests an opportunity to come in. Lindo Gutle, low-hanging fruit. What is the low-hanging fruit that you think that the province can be taking advantage of, very briefly?
So what the province can be taking advantage of, or let me rather speak on what we have decided to take advantage of as Mumbingomso, is ensuring that, the very basic practical things that young people need on the ground are made available. So the spokesperson already spoke about the qualitative outputs that the department is really trying to increase. And that's where we believe, as Umumingomso, we've tried to identify those low-hanging fruits and assist with those qualitative outputs. We've got good relationships with schools, and what we do then is to make sure that whatever the schools and communities are lacking in, we are able to provide. So simple things like our center in Mdantsane, where we provide young people with study areas, where we really are trying to strengthen and focus on this career guidance aspect that we really feel is a huge problem for these young people. Our center has very basic things like providing bread for young people when they're coming to study at our center, because we understand that some of these young people might not have anything to go back to at home. So we also have very basic things like transporting young people who can't afford to go to their second chance matric exam, So those very basic, practical, hand-holding sort of efforts that young people need on the ground is what we focus on. Because, there's amazing strategies, there's amazing, things in place that can be done for these young people. But within our power as an NGO, we are able to focus on the very basic practical things and including their parents as well. Making sure that these young people are supported with counseling and psychosocial support as well.
Johanna, low-hanging fruit?
The million-rand question. What I would say the low-hanging fruit is we need to build a network of public-private partnerships. We need to stop relying on one stream or another stream to solve these problems. The government is, of course, the central role player, but we've had so many great partnerships with districts, with circuit managers, with role players at provincial level, where we really work together as NGOs, as businesses, as government, to look at the particular needs of these various communities. And, the Eastern Cape is not a monolith. You're going to find in every single school and in every single community, there's very specific needs out there. And it's not reasonable for the government to be expected to solve all the problems. So I think, to me, it's the partnerships, working together, each solving or each tackling our parts of how we can uplift and create opportunities for these wonderful young people to contribute on a national and international stage.
All right. Let me thank you all for your contribution to this conversation. We are completely out of time. That's why we wrap it up on The Talking Point.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book These Things Really Do Happen to Me by Kaya Dlang, read by Lerato Mvelase.
Why is the system designed to deprive me for being born in poverty? In 2017, I was invited by the young and charismatic Mark Sham to speak as one of 4 speakers at his Suits and Sneakers event. The other speakers were Dr. Adriana Murray, a quantum biologist who has been shortlisted as one of the people who will fly to Mars, not to return, Ran Nuna, the co-founder of the Creative Council, an agency that was sold for R1 billion before Ran was 40 years old, and Carl Fussman, writer-at-large for Esquire magazine, known for the What I've Learned column. Then there was me. I felt terribly inadequate. As if that wasn't bad enough, when I got to the Sandton Convention Center for my talk, I realized that I had completely misheard Mark when he said there would be an audience of 300. I was off by another whole 0. There were 3,000 people. When I got up to speak, Dr. Adriana Murray had already spoken, and so had Ran Nuna. My talk focused on the philosophy of first show you can and then ask. When you've asked for help, people often want to see that you can do what you say you can before they help you. You can't say, I am passionate about playing the guitar if you have never learned anything about the instrument. If you can't afford a guitar, you could still try to make one with a tin can, for example. I use the example of the CV that got me my first job in advertising. I had money troubles and had to drop out of college, meaning that I'd left the AAA school of advertising without any qualification. But since I still loved advertising and wanted to get into the industry, I took a chance and applied for a job at Lowbull Calvert Pace, one of the most creative advertising agencies in Cape Town at the time. Everyone wanted to work there. This is what my CV said. Kaya Dlanga CV. I live in Pinelands, not Guguletu. I can use phones, faxes, and computers without breaking them. Some of my best friends are white. I can swim when it's absolutely necessary. I'm not a member of COSATU. Position applying for? Copywriter. Experience in the field? I used to write slogans on township walls like Free Mandela and One Man, One Vote. this was a very successful campaign, as you might have noticed. I got the job. It was around this point in my speech that I started to talk about how many black children, even those with natural talent, are not afforded the opportunities because they don't have money to study. I spoke about my creative skills, which fortunately got me hired, even though I didn't have formal qualifications. I was more fortunate than most people in my position. I asked the question, why is the system designed to deprive me for being born in poverty, even though I have all the talent in the world? A quarter of the room was black and understood the pain of this statement. The other 3/4 were white and seemed to be hearing this for the first time.